I became a dietitian because I was fascinated with the idea that food could be medicine. In this world where we have, pharmaceuticals and a Band-Aid for everything, like the idea of what's natural in this world and the idea of that being healing for us as humans was just something that I needed to know more about. But Akkermansia is what we call an anaerobe. So that just means that it cannot be exposed to oxygen. It lives in our colon, and that is an oxygen-free environment. So therefore, you're not coming in contact with this bug through your food. You're not being exposed to it through your environment. It's not in the soil. The way that you're getting it is if mom has it and she's passed it on to baby through the birthing process. And then the only food that it's ever been isolated in is breast milk. The gut influences all aspects of our health. So from our immune system to the way that our skin looks, literally every body system is connected to how the bowel is functioning, how the gut is functioning, and the organisms, the bacteria that live in that environment play a really critical role in our health.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk. All right, we're back. And I say we're back because today I have a guest on the show by the name of Christina O'Connor. I'm so excited to have this conversation. I think it's been some time that we've been trying to schedule something, and we finally made it. So we're here. And so Christina is a registered dietitian. She does a lot of work with Pendulum Life, which for those of you who have really been following my journey, you've heard me talk a lot about gut health, how important it is to me and my clients. And we're going to be talking about products that I take daily. And so I don't want you to skip over that because there's going to be some important takeaways from this. I want you all to be able to understand that gut health is at the foundation of overall body and mind and spirit health. So Christina, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Likewise. And where are you calling in from?
I'm on the East Coast, so I'm in Virginia, sort of near Virginia Beach.
Awesome. So as you may know, I'm here in New York City, and it's a really interesting time period because the Knicks just won the championship. And so
I was in the Hamptons during that. It was hard to find a place to eat where it was quiet. Everyone was obsessed with the game. So it was exciting. It was a vibe for sure.
Very much a vibe. And what's interesting with my backstory is I'm a big basketball player myself. I played, all through high school, college, and I played professionally overseas. And so basketball was a huge part of my life. And I'm from Oklahoma City, but I live in New York. So I've been living in New York for half my life. I just turned 45 a few days ago. And what's interesting is that Oklahoma City is my first home, and Oklahoma City Thunder got the championship last year. And then this year, I was so excited for the potential of having New York City Knicks play against Oklahoma City Thunder in the finals. And we were so close. We were so close. It didn't quite happen, but I'm happy that my second home, New York City, also has a championship now.
The championship is following you.
Yes. Yeah. So where is it going to be next year?
Right?
Anyway, I digress. So I would love to paint a picture of your early career and how you got to where you are today with doing such important work. I'd love to kind of talk about that because I think every time I have a guest on the show, I usually see that there's this through line that
Hmm.
happens with certain practitioner and experts who have their own story, and then from that story they use it to kind of help others and to create whatever it is that they've created. So can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I became a dietitian because I was fascinated with the idea that food could be medicine. In this world where we have, pharmaceuticals and a band-aid for everything, like the idea of what's natural in this world and the idea of that being healing for us as humans was just something that I needed to know more about. And then as an early dietitian, I started my career in the NICU. So that's the neonatal intensive care unit, which is a really stressful environment. But I learned so much just about the human body, but especially about premature infants. And one of the things that really stood out to me in the NICU and with preterm babies is they're still developing. And there was this issue of the gut still developing and this issue of feeding them and getting nutrition to them so that they could grow, but also this complexity of the bowel not being fully developed. So, as you can imagine, so many issues and complications that come along with that that can last a lifetime for these infants. And the microbiome, the bacteria that makes up that environment, that developing environment, really plays a critical role in their outcomes. And so I became just super interested in that world of microbes that lives in the gut. As I started exploring that and researching it, I then came to understand that the gut influences all aspects of our health. So, from our immune system to the way that our skin looks, literally every body system is connected to how the bowel is functioning, how the gut is functioning, and the organisms, the bacteria that live in that environment play a really critical role in our health as well. So they're sort of we're the host, and they are hanging out in there.
That is very fascinating. I must say, first of all, this is a very interesting outlook from a very specific perspective, right?
Mhm.
And I love this perspective because a lot of my work, at least some of my current work and what I'm working on towards the future, is I'm writing a book. It's my second book actually, and the book is focused on sensory awareness. It's actually called Sensory Movement,
Mhm.
and some of the early concepts that I like to talk about is the developmental movement milestones that we all go through
Yeah.
throughout life. And it
Yeah.
starts with infancy. It starts with actually development in the womb.
Yep.
And one thing I have to admit that I hadn't really considered is the development of the gut, which is so important, right? I mean, I obviously I understand. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. I'm a father of two. I have two
Mhm.
small kids that live in Europe. They live in Hungary, and I got a chance to directly experience what it was like to see a birth in real time twice, right? And to understand that there is a lot of women nowadays, I think, are super fortunate to be able to have a natural birth, to be able to
Yep.
have a birth in the natural way, so that we can
Yep.
get all of the bacteria that is so important. But it's also that development and what we do after birth and so on and so forth. And then that's where my experience kicks in even harder, which is watching these young beings grow and how they follow along the movement milestones, because
Yep.
if you're really aware as a parent, you
Mhm.
can really see if there's some stunted growth or some missed milestones, so that we can then correct some of these movement patterns. But I also like focusing on the gut first and
Yeah.
then going on from there. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, Pendulum's story actually with Colleen, our founder and CEO, Pendulum's very early beginnings started with her daughter. This is a story that she tells, but her daughter being a premature infant and her growing up and having, different food intolerances and allergies and things like that that the rest of the family didn't have. They weren't dealing with those things. And if anybody knows, you get a lot of antibiotics when you're in the NICU. So they're just trying to prevent life-threatening infections, but those antibiotics, continuous antibiotics, that definitely, affects how the baby's going to grow up and develop early on in life. And, while we're on the topic of infancy and birthing, your gut microbiome is, the way that you're born, what you're fed first, right after you're born, all of that plays a really significant role in the gut microbiome that you're going to be set up with as you move on throughout your life and into adulthood. So it's a really critical piece of the puzzle for moms to be able to understand, and when they're thinking about their birth plan and they're thinking about what they're going to feed their infants, like it's a huge responsibility.
Huge, huge. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. For those who are not watching this episode, I did pull up the Pendulum Life website, and I quickly showed Colleen's
Yeah.
story there, and
Yes.
and a few of the other things that are really interesting. So for those that are curious and want to
Hmm.
dive deeper into the Pendulum story, please check out pendulumlife.com, and you'll see Christina and everyone else that is involved in that story. It's amazing. It, like I've mentioned in the intro, it's a product that I have taken for a while. And so I would like to maybe let's direct this story for those who have listened up to this point and they've thought, okay, I understand the importance that you guys have created around this story, around the gut. What is the next step? Like, what does it look like whenever you're working with someone that just has maybe thrown their hands up and said, well, I've done everything. What is the next step for this person?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, like I mentioned, the way that you're born, what you're fed when you're first born, like all of that plays a role in how the gut microbiome is going to be set up moving into adulthood. But sometimes these things are unavoidable, right? There's an emergency C-section. You have to feed formula because mom doesn't have any milk. So those things play a role, sometimes in a negative way. And there are probiotics, organisms that are meant to be living and working within the gut microbiome that actually, can help us move past some of those issues that we might be experiencing as a result of, early life experiences. So, like I mentioned, Colleen's daughter had food intolerances, allergies. Some people have what we call gut dysbiosis. So, that can just look like IBS. You have trouble with your stool, your constipation, your diarrhea, or just overall like not feeling well because you have digestive issues. And so there are key organisms that really play a role in helping to correct some of those issues. They play a role in rebalancing the organisms that are living within the gut microbiome. Some are good and some are, not so good if they sort of get out of control. And we all are very aware of probiotics. You see them. There's tons of companies that manufacture them, but typically on the shelf, within the last, like, let's say 50 years or so, it's been the same lactobacillus and bifidobacteria strains. So if you turn the bottle over and you're looking at the label, you'll notice that like the start of the name is either, like I mentioned, lactobacillus or bifidobacteria. Those are really great organisms. They do a lot of good for us as the human host. But Pendulum has done something really different and really unique. There is a strain called Akkermansia muciniphila, And it is not like those lactobacillus or bifidobacteria strains. So typically those strains, you get them in your fermented foods. You get them, just in your environment. Maybe your kids are playing in the dirt. You're exposed to those organisms very easily, and they're great for us. We need them. As a dietitian, I'm constantly encouraging my patients to consume fermented foods because of those organisms. But Akkermansia is what we call an anaerobe. So that just means that it cannot be exposed to oxygen. It lives in our colon, and that is an oxygen-free environment. So therefore, you're not coming in contact with this bug through your food. You're not being exposed to it through your environment. It's not in the soil. The way that you're getting it is if mom has it and she's passed it on to baby through the birthing process. And then the only food that it's ever been isolated in is breast milk. So
Mm.
there could be a whole host of people that grow up never receiving Akkermansia, never being exposed to it, and before now, it's never been available in supplement form. So we're just missing this very critical, what's called keystone organism, that could be related to, not having it has a lot of negative downstream effects, which we can talk more about.
Yeah, very good point. And I think this is interesting because I think the way that you describe that, I think allows for some hope because, if a person stopped listening to the point where they're like, okay, I didn't maybe have a natural birth. I was born out of C-section and my life is screwed. Therefore, there's no hope,
Yeah,
right? I feel
totally.
like there is hope,
There
obviously.
is.
And I think this maybe is a good point in mentioning that there are tests. Like, for instance, how I knew about this is I went through this testing program called Vitract.
Mhm.
And Vitract allowed me to understand if like the importance of having either not enough Akkermansia or having too much Akkermansia.
Yep.
And that was when I understood like, oh, just because I heard about Akkermansia some years ago, I think when Pendulum first came out,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, this is such a very powerful bacteria that we should have in our gut. Let me just go and buy the product and start taking it.
Yeah.
Then I did the gut test
Yeah.
and I realized that I had zero Akkermansia. And it was interesting because I love eating fermented foods. I feel like I was eating a lot of the right things, but I had so much butyrate in my system
Mhm.
that, and we could talk about this too, but there was so much butyrate that it seemed as if it was taking over. It was not allowing for Akkermansia to come in because there was so much
Interesting.
butyrate.
Yep.
And so that is my hope is that when people hear me say that, they think not, oh my gosh, there's too much to think about here. The hope should be that they go out and get a gut test first, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you can absolutely go that route. You know, there's two ways to look at it. For those who are like really interested in understanding, what is in the gut, for those who really have like severe symptoms, like I would totally recommend getting a gut test and just looking at who are the inhabitants of that environment. What are they doing there? The thing with gut tests, they're not an exact science yet, so take it as a piece of information that you still have to put together with your symptoms and just your overall lifestyle and your overall gut health. It's definitely not it's a piece of the puzzle. They can be a little pricey, so sometimes people are like, I don't wanna spend the money on that. But if you are making certain interventions and, nothing is moving the needle, sometimes it really can be worth, again, looking at who's in there and what are they doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I love that because I do feel like there's so much information out there and there's so many tests that we can do.
Mm.
But I think this is a full circle moment. It goes back to what I was talking about before with the book called Sensory and Movement. the whole idea is for us to become more sensory aware,
Yeah.
more aware of who we are, our interoception, combined with our exteroception, our environment, our epigenetics, all these factors that might play a role. And when we can bring down the quote unquote noise, it's easier to tap into what is truly happening, like not allowing the the noise to affect our daily decisions. Maybe
Totally.
it can impact our results, of course, but
Hmm.
we should first and foremost kind of find what is baseline, and then what changes are we making to help us to feel better. Then if you
Yes.
want to follow up with testing and things like that, when the means are there to do so, then by all means do so. But I like your approach because it's not all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
Just getting a gut test one time doesn't create the full story, like you pointed out. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Just use it as a tool. We have so many, and to your point, it can be overwhelming. There are so many different things that you can test and look at. Your aura ring is constantly giving you information. Yeah, like, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Right, right. Yeah. There's what I've started doing. So, are you familiar with Function Health?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I just started working with Function Health. I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've heard a number of things that are like concerning for people,
Yeah.
mostly revolving around price, of course.
Yeah.
And yesterday I just gave 13 vials of blood so I can figure out like what's happening, right?
Yes.
And yeah, it's what I'm trying to do is paint this bigger picture
Mhm.
so that I then can talk to my clients, talk to my friends and loved ones and say, well, okay, this is what I've done. This is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Sure, you do not have to do it this way, but here's an idea of how I'm painting my picture. So what I'm doing is I'm taking Function Health results, I'm inputting it into my
Mhm.
Hume Health pod, which is that in-home, very similar to a DEXA scan,
Yep.
and then I pair that now with the new Hume Health band. No, this is not a commercial for Hume, but what it's trying to do for me is give me this avatar of who I am
Yep.
that hopefully is paired with how I truly feel.
Yep.
I use it to confirm how I feel. And
Mhm.
then when something is off, let's say that I see maybe there's a rise in visceral fat. Okay, I can adjust my food intake. Maybe I see that my stress score is off the roof. Okay, I can maybe add in more recovery components to my routine.
Yep.
And so I'm using it to leverage how I want to live my life. Do I need it? Is it the be all end all? Absolutely not. But for me, it is truly helping so that I can then help others. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love that. And, I'm super into all of that too. I love learning about we're all on our own health journey, whether we're trying to figure out new symptoms or, new issues that have arisen or whether we're just trying to optimize our overall health. We're all somewhere along that spectrum and in that journey.
so how much does movement play a role in your career?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly plays a role because we know that exercise and movement, that leads to well, let me back up. There are studies looking at particularly athletes and their levels of Akkermansia, and it tends to be higher in
Mm.
athletes. So there's also a study looking at obesity, and folks that are falling into that category tend to have lower levels of Akkermansia. So Akkermansia is definitely this longevity associated bug. Folks that fall into the centenarian category. So folks that are living 100 years and beyond and have good quality of life, they have adequate levels of Akkermansia. The only thing I will say about athletes is when you start getting into those endurance athletes, like triathlons and
Mhm.
marathons and things like that, puts a lot of stress on the body. And we have noticed, not we, but there is literature to suggest that sometimes that can play a role in decreasing your levels of Akkermansia. So it really is kind of what is that sweet spot. So absolutely, we know that there's correlations with movement and exercise and reasonable levels of Akkermansia. That's a huge piece of that puzzle.
what's interesting about what you pointed out, and I'm glad you touched on that because, well, I figured you, of course, would use movement as a piece of your picture when you're working with clients. Obviously, that makes sense. And then when I'm sort of being not a devil's advocate, but when
Hmm.
I'm asking questions in a way that I feel like a lot of my viewers would want to ask this question, I think of, well, what kind of exercise, right? Because
Hmm.
there's many different types of exercise, right?
Yep.
There's going for a walk, which I call a postprandial walk or
Yeah.
postprandial movement that I think is
Yep.
very important for
Mm.
every single person listening and watching right now. It's
Yes.
something that we all should have the capacity to do.
Yep.
When I work with clients, and I am not a dietitian, I'm not a registered dietitian, but I do work with people from a health coach perspective to encourage them to work with dietitians who are at the helm of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And but I also say, like, listen, before you decide who you want to work with, there's a few key things that I feel like everyone should be doing, and that is walking. Anytime you're going to put something in your mouth, whether it's a food or a beverage, right? Especially if it's beyond water, then think about, do I have the time to also move when doing so? Because if not,
Yes.
then maybe you shouldn't consume that. Maybe you
Yeah.
should. I have this thing where I say it's like the are you truly hungry checklist, right?
Yeah.
It's like, first and foremost, grab some water because maybe you're dehydrated for a little
Yep.
bit,
Yep.
right? Then I say, okay, if you've passed that, you've done the water, you've focused on the hydration piece. The next step would be, okay, are you just bored? Right? Is
Yeah.
it something that you just habitually go for at this time every single day? If so, maybe you can change your perspective a little bit and say that the body is just looking for movement as a
Mm.
snack, right?
Hmm.
A movement as a nutrition, as a medicine, like you pointed out earlier. And maybe that's something that can quell that hunger or the hunger pang. And then the third point on the checklist is, maybe you truly did not get enough nutrients in the meal previous to that,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like it's a healthy checklist that is, 3 points that should help you dictate if you're going to consume some food. And
Yeah.
then if you are going to consume the food because you realize that there was a nutrient deficiency, then okay, now you're doing something also. You're taking in nutrients, hopefully it's something healthy, and then you're getting the movement, because if you're going to eat something or consume something, you should move.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there is so much good science to back up the movement piece after eating. And for myself, someone who struggles with blood sugar management, like that has been, wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, like I can really see in real time, like how consuming the same meal and not walking afterwards or squats. Sometimes my 13-year-old and I will do squats. He's totally on my bandwagon. So he's like, Mom, we just
Yes.
ate fettuccine Alfredo. Like, don't you think we should do some squats? I'm like, yeah, let's do some squats and let's go for a walk. So
Perfect.
yeah, so and I can see that, in real time, if I eat that same meal and I go for a walk right after, or I start doing squats, which is super easy to do, right? It just takes a little bit of motivation. But when I'm wearing a CGM, I can actually see that those blood sugar spikes, when I compare them, it's not nearly as severe if I go and do some movement. And like that's just because the glucose is going into our muscles, right? Instead of just circulating in the bloodstream. And believe it or not, Akkermansia plays a huge role in metabolism. So when you're ready, we can go into like what are the benefits of this strain? Like it's so important. Why do we need it? What does it do?
So I'm glad you brought up CGMs, because with my long rants, or I can go down rabbit holes very easily. That was
It's
one of
fun.
the things I wanted to bring up,
Yeah.
was my practice, or my experience of using a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor. I've done it several times throughout my life, and what I learned from that was truly, truly helpful. And it was, and it maybe still should be, part of what I would suggest for people to try out, because the insight I gained from wearing a CGM for a couple of months, I noticed that interplay between cardio training and strength training,
Yep.
and the spikes that I would get from my strength training
Hmm.
versus that steady build and this was specific for me, right? Because some
Yeah.
people are different, right? Depends on, how much activation you have with your, type 2 and type 1 muscle fibers compared to what kind of training you're doing. Are you in zone 2? Are you zone 3? Are you
Yep.
mostly in zone 1? So, but there's a lot you can learn from leveraging that. And I remember one of the first times, I didn't know as much as I know now about it, but one of the first times that I saw spikes in my glucose, or at least the reading on the CGM, I realized it was right after doing like a CrossFit style workout that was
Yeah.
really high intense. And then I started doing rucking, right?
Yeah.
Rucking is one of my favorite things to do.
Mm.
Throw on a bit of weight. Doesn't have to be a lot. People think it has to be a huge backpack or 25% of your body weight. Doesn't have to be that. It can be that. But when I found myself going for a 1 hour or 2 hour walk, maybe taking a phone call if I need to, being able to have a conversation, not
Yeah.
really taking my heart rate beyond a certain threshold, I realized that that was actually the best for my metabolism. That was the
Yeah.
best for my fat burning capacity. So
Yeah.
very interesting. Love
Yeah,
CGMs.
it's true. And you made a good point. The continuous glucose monitor, um, it personalizes, like, because like you said, for someone else that workout may not have caused a spike. What I found most interesting in wearing a CGM is, the foods that like I thought were spiking my blood sugar, like obviously sugar and sweets and desserts and things like that, like yes, but also the tortilla chips that I was eating, when I have chips and salsa. So like my body is like, nope, we don't particularly like that. And so it was all about that learning. These are the things that spike my blood sugar. These are the things that, I need to be conscious about, when I'm choosing foods.
And just to add on to that, and then
Yeah.
we'll move on, is learning how well we can come back from that
Yep.
spike,
Yep.
right? How long does
Totally.
that spike stay up?
Yep.
And then what time frame does it take to get back to baseline?
Yep. Yep.
So this
And
is our metabolic flexibility, right? So
absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was fascinating. I love wearing them and, testing different things. It just gives you so much insight if you're into that. You're into optimizing your health. It's great.
absolutely. All right. So let's dive into Akkermansia a bit more, because
Yeah.
I know this is heavily a part of this conversation. It's why I first started really diving into the research around Pendulum, which then led me into, I actually went to the launch of Gut
Yeah.
Fuel
Yeah.
here in New York City with Colleen and a few
Super
others.
cool.
And that was really fun because I now use Gut Fuel all the time. All right. It's part of my daily thing.
Yep.
So let's talk about Akkermansia and then maybe even dive into Gut Fuel and what people could
Totally.
anticipate from taking it.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I mentioned, it is considered a keystone or commensal strain. And when I sort of unpack that, what does that mean? When Akkermansia is missing from the human gut microbiome, we see a lot of negative downstream effects, and that is specifically related to what it does for us. And so, when I think about the benefits, I put them into two main categories. The first is gut barrier integrity. So if you're not familiar, just a little bit of an anatomy lesson, the gut wall or the gut barrier is what we call semi-permeable. Okay, so it's supposed to allow the things that we need, like water and nutrients, to pass through freely, but we don't want pathogens and toxins and opportunistic bacteria. We don't want those things passing through and getting into systemic circulation. The other thing that can pass through is food proteins. So a lot of people will say like, oh, I can't tolerate dairy and I can't tolerate gluten. It may actually be that some of those food proteins are getting through the gut wall and ending up in systemic circulation. And so your body is then going, wait, this isn't supposed to be here. This is an invader. Like I now have to have a response to this. So I'm now inflamed. I'm allergic. I can't have these foods. And it really could be more related to the integrity of your gut barrier. And so the role that Akkermansia plays along this gut wall, you have a layer of mucus. And Akkermansia has a super weird job. Okay. So just hang with me. It actually comes in and it acts like a cleanup crew or like a recycler. So it comes in and it consumes the old, worn out mucin that makes up this mucosal layer. As it does that, it stimulates us as the human host. It stimulates our goblet cells to say, like, oh, okay, it's time to make a fresh layer of mucus. So by the Akkermansia consuming the old, worn out stuff, our body is then getting that feedback that, hey, okay, it's time to make that new, fresh layer. And that layer should be turning over like every 5 to 7 days or so. So you can imagine that if you don't have Akkermansia, then your goblet cells are not getting that stimulation. They're not getting that feedback. And so therefore, they're not producing that new fresh layer of mucus. So what's happening to that layer? It's becoming degraded. It's getting worn out. It's becoming sort of patchy and has holes in it. And so that's the perfect place for these opportunistic bacteria, these toxins, these pathogens to just slip right through the barrier and into systemic circulation. The other really interesting thing that Akkermansia is doing for us is more in the metabolic realm. So Akkermansia is what we call a butyrate producer. So when we consume fiber, and so that we'll talk about the gut fuel product because that is fiber. When we consume things like fiber and polyphenols, these organisms that are in the Pendulum products, their job is to ferment that fiber. That's what they do. That's their whole reason for living. That process of fermentation of the fiber in our gut gives us back something very important. And you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, and that is butyrate. Butyrate, short chain fatty acids. That's what butyrate is. There's a couple of them: butyrate, acetate, propionate. They are all so important for the functions of metabolism, specifically GLP-1. And GLP-1 is something that Pendulum has been talking about since our inception. Like that's the whole way that our probiotic strains, that's the way that they work. That's what they do. They stimulate GLP-1 hormone in the gut by way of that butyrate production. And we've actually done clinical trials to prove that. So like when the rest of the world wanted to start talking about GLP-1, we were like, oh my gosh, this is like either a blessing or a curse. We're still trying to figure that out. But like our message is you can make your own GLP-1. Like you might just be missing the tools, the microbes to make your own GLP-1. So before you go investigating an injection, that's the right path for some people. But if you're interested in looking at, okay, what is my body missing? That's always the question that I'm asking. If I'm experiencing a symptom, what's my body missing, and how can I give it back the tools that it needs to perform those functions that I'm looking for it to perform? And so metabolism is one of them. What am I doing to improve my blood sugar? Because I know that I'm somewhat insulin resistant. It runs in my family. Type 2 does. I am optimizing my gut microbiome and making sure that I have Akkermansia and some of these other butyrate producing strains so that my metabolism can do what it's supposed to do.
So what do parasites, what is the role of parasites in this whole story?
Oh man. Now you mentioned rabbit hole. Like that is definitely one that I am currently going down. And I don't know.
I think
I'm
a
not
lot of us do.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a functional medicine provider just a couple weeks ago. I'm taking my dad. He's dealing with some health concerns, and she just point blank was like, I ask people, do you eat sushi? And some, they'll say like, oh, well, sometimes. And she's like, well, then you have parasites. I'm just like, oh man, that tuna tartare doesn't really look so good on the menu anymore. Yeah, I don't know enough about I know they're stealing nutrients from us. I know that they're definitely doing damage structurally to the gut, and that is so damaging. There are a lot of things that are ruining our guts that are environmental parasites being one of them, but also just the toxins in our food. So like you mentioned, or you think about glyphosate,
Hmm.
that is literally puncturing like holes in the gut wall. Like it is destroying. You're doing all of these good things for your gut. You're eating fermented foods, you're doing all these things, but then glyphosate comes in and just destroys all of that. Like it's incredibly inflammatory and it wreaks havoc on the gut barrier. So clean water, clean food, clean air, those are really important to help safeguard against the things that you're trying to do or trying to improve. So yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things to be worried about, when you're thinking about what you're eating and what's in it.
And then, first of all, well said. Because I think most of us, and maybe this is a hot take, but I think most of us have parasites living within our environment, whether we
Yeah,
realize it or not.
totally.
And there's, as you know, there's a plethora of different types of parasites, right? So
Yep.
it's not just one type. But
Yep.
then I think maybe the person that's listening, again, I always like to try to put myself in the shoes of the viewer.
Yeah.
There's people out there who may have, issues with nightshades. And when
Hmm.
they hear take fermented vegetables or, eat fermented products, they freak out because they're like, well, I've been told not to have that because of
Yeah.
my situation. What have you dealt with that? And what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, interesting. I think with the nightshades, and this has just been my own experience because I am somewhat sensitive to them as well. But when they're fermented, I can tolerate them better. So I wonder if, and again, that's just me, but I do wonder if sort of that fermentation process can make them more tolerable. But yeah, that's another the nightshades is an interesting if you look at like what Dr. Gundry says about nightshades, like he is convinced that they can be detrimental to everyone. I'm not 100% sold that they're not great for everyone. Like that's another rabbit hole that I'm sort of going down as I'm on my own health journey, right? Like
Absolutely.
these
Absolutely.
these certain foods, I don't tolerate them well. So there is definitely something to that. But when they're fermented, for me personally, they seem to be better tolerated.
And it's the same with me. Absolutely the same
Interesting.
with me. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But at the same time, I feel like some of this bacteria conversation, at least from the way I see it, it's almost
Mhm.
like a use it or lose it concept. So if
Mm.
we don't introduce a certain variety within our diet,
Oh
then our
yeah.
body gets used to only dealing with what's coming in. And I've been
Yes.
having what is it called? Kimchi
Yeah.
since I was a little boy, since I
Yeah.
was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And that was a big part because I grew up in martial arts and
Mhm.
the Eastern culture, there's a lot of use of fermented
Totally.
products, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
throughout my life, I've been able to handle it well. And so maybe the person who doesn't deal with what they think is a fermented product, right? Or they think that it doesn't work well for them is maybe because it's newly introducing this sort of food group that
Mhm.
may take some time. As we know that there's this hormesis, there's this time in which sometimes maybe we dip in how we feel so that we can then
Oh,
re-regulate, right?
totally. Yes. Okay. So, my husband is a perfect example. A lot of dysbiosis, like just a lot of gut issues, right? That he's learned how to just manage. And for me, I'm like, no, I want to heal that, right? Like, this is not normal. I don't want you to have to manage these symptoms. I want you to know that this is not normal, and it can be healed. So I try to give him a probiotic. He thinks I'm trying to kill him because it makes things worse, right? And so he's like, I don't want any of that. I don't want anything to do with it. Like, I just want to go back to managing my symptoms. So exactly what you're saying. Sometimes things will get a little worse as the gut microbiome is being restored and rebalanced.
Bingo.
And so my advice is to go low and slow if that is happening to you. For our particular products, I'll say, like, just do one capsule like every other day if you have to, or just introducing it a couple of times a week. That way you're not having what I like to call a hostile takeover. So you don't have like Akkermansia coming in like, we're in charge now, everybody out, like, and you're having tons of symptoms. Instead, it's more of a gradual takeover. And I like to use the word takeover. That's not right, because we don't want any organism taking over. We
Right.
want a balance of diverse microbes living within the gut microbiome.
I think it's definitely worth being said. I'm glad you said that, because I am cautious of the person still listening to this point. If you're still with us, thank you. But I'm cautious of the person that is like, yep, everything he's saying, everything she's saying, it makes sense. Let me go to the website, let me order, and let me just go hard.
Yeah.
This is where we have to transition slowly. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I usually like people to embrace some level of intermittent fasting or fasting, whatever
Hmm.
that might mean, because there's
Yeah.
different forms of fasting, as we know, but simply to reset
Yeah.
the gut so that we can understand what baseline feels like. And getting the baseline is not overnight. Getting the
Mm-mm.
baseline, because if we've been having gut dysbiosis for 10 years, 20 years, do you think that it's going to all of a sudden flip, over a weekend because you did a 5-day fast or something? No. So we have to give it some time to ease into figuring out, okay, this is my baseline. Now let's start to focus on, like you said, maybe microdose the bacterial strains so that the gut has an opportunity to not freak out. Because we know what
Totally.
happens when the gut freaks out, right? It's like our gut is our second brain,
Yep.
and it is that for a reason. If we have chaos there, then
Yep.
we probably have chaos here. We probably
Totally.
have chaos in the rest of our life. So
Yep.
we're not doing anyone any favors by saying, yeah, just take this and check back in with me in a month.
Nope.
No,
Nope. Nope.
no.
Yeah, no, you need to be feeling good. That's the whole point. Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say something about what you pointed out, and now it's left me,
Fasting,
darn it.
maybe?
Oh, yeah, fasting. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's so much literature to support fasting for a metabolic reset. Like you mentioned, just kind of getting back to a baseline with the gut, just like tamping down some of those symptoms, just letting everything kind of settle and calm down. Yeah, fasting can be really beneficial. And then also when there's research to suggest that like cell turnover, and autophagy. So like
Autophagy, yep.
getting rid of, your body is constantly trying to like clean out and detox and get rid of dead cells. And so fasting is just a way to support your body's natural detox process. I will say for women, like if we're going into like that perimenopause or menopausal, you just have to be careful, I think, and we're all so different. So you have to find the right fasting for you and where you are in life. I have to be careful that, like, if I see something like, oh, cold plunging, it's good for everybody, I need to like do this. now we're sort of realizing that it may not be the best thing for, a woman who is perimenopausal or menopausal, where, those extreme workouts are spiking their blood sugar. Is it too stressful for the body to just go extreme cold plunge? Like maybe a little cold is okay, but like the ice
Yep.
cold bath, maybe that's too stressful and is having the opposite effect. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because so I'll be talking more about this on my platform at some point very, very soon. But I, for a couple of years now, have been a huge fan of Prolon.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm
I
sure
just
you're
bought it. Yeah.
oh,
I'm
okay,
getting
great.
ready to do it. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
oh, so you haven't done it yet.
it's in the box, like sitting in
Ooh.
the other room. I just bought
Mine is
it.
right there. Mine
Yeah.
is right there. Yeah. So I think this one that I'm gonna do next will be my sixth one. And for
Cool.
those who are not familiar with Prolon, Prolon is a 5-day fasting mimicking diet
Yep.
with food. Okay.
Yes.
This
I'm
is what I
so
want people to
excited about it.
understand. Yes.
Yes.
And what I've learned by doing it, having many clients do it, and I'm
Hmm.
talking like from my high profile clients to my family. Like my brother recently did it, and I bought him a kit, sent it to him because I knew that he has the capacity to do it, but I knew that he would maybe resist the price of it, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, the price is one thing. I understand people are price sensitive, but when I broke down the cost, it
Yeah.
actually is way less expensive than what I normally do on a daily basis when I'm
Yeah.
trying to eat healthy, right?
Yeah. No, totally. That's a great point.
Yes. And so for people who don't know, it's basically it's 5 days in which you're going to be going far less than the calorie intake you normally have.
Yep.
And so day 1 is around 1,200 calories. And then days 2 through 5 is approximately 800 calories.
Hmm.
And you essentially only eat and drink from the box. So each day you get a box, and depending on which ones you have, you either have the powdered soups where you make a soup, add water to it, blah blah blah,
Yep.
or they have these new ones now that is actually liquid that is already in the packet, and you do that, right? You just heat it up. Now, to the person who is the purist out there and who is like, well, I don't want to eat packaged goods and things like that. Totally get it. This is the reason why I say we want to specify it for you.
Yeah.
So Prolon is just there to kind of
Make it easy.
to make it easy to clean the
Hmm.
slate, save a bit of money.
Yep.
But what I'm going to be doing now with this program here in New York City is I'm taking a group of about 10 to 15 people, and I'm going to help them to do it FIY or DIY, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So do it yourself so that
Totally.
you can leverage the resources you have around you.
Hmm.
We've partnered up with a couple of different, well, one in specific is Springbone. They
Hmm.
make amazing bone broths, and actually they were the first guest on my show back in 2017.
Love that.
And they've now grown, and it's really, really good. And it's centered around bone broth. Well, when we hear bone broth, we know that typically that is a very healthy thing that our ancestors have done and leveraged for many, many years. But then we have to be mindful of those who maybe are vegetarian or vegan, right?
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so there are options to do that. But the whole point is to reset the gut.
Yep. Yep.
Right? Get this autophagy process happening,
Yep.
right? And this apoptosis that also happens,
Yep.
right? So cell death versus cellular recycling.
Yep.
And what I noticed is the clarity.
Yep.
I noticed that our body, when you allow it to, it calms down the noise, because consuming food, consuming anything really is more work for the body to have to go through.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about dealing with parasites, I've seen personally that
Hmm.
when you fast and you fast properly, then you're also starving the parasites, because the parasites need food too, right?
Yep. That's
And
exactly right.
when you starve the parasites, now you have a better opportunity to heal the gut. So then now we can take all these expensive supplements that we've been told to take, or we've been shown that might be beneficial. But if we take it when the gut is healthy, when the gut microbiome is healthy, then I think those supplements have more impact in our body.
Yeah.
And here
Yeah.
I am.
Totally.
I'm on my soapbox.
No, totally. I agree. And even when you look at, just a little bit of a different path, when you look at overall brain health, and even, there's solid literature on epilepsy, brain cancer, brain tumors. And that's why they have dietitians in the hospital administering the ketogenic diet, I'm not saying like everybody should go keto, but there are specific things that the ketogenic diet can do for improving your brain health. You mentioned like more clarity, like that is settled science. Like we
Yep.
know that like our brain functions better when we're feeding it high quality fats, and we're not doing a lot of the carbohydrates. So
Yep.
yeah,
And
totally.
and and to just one more like piggyback moment,
Hmm.
so the reason why I created this DIY reset, I'm calling it the holistic reset, is because I want people to understand that okay, there are people who have different lifestyles, right? Some people want to get bigger, they want to get stronger,
Hmm.
and they have a program that they're following, so they might need a little bit more protein than say the Prolon diet is calling for, because
Hmm.
the Prolon diet is prefacing vegetables only, so it's a vegetarian moment for about a week, which I think anybody should be able to do this for a week. And then also, can you maybe skip out on 1 week of your hardcore workout program so that you can get better health? Because I
Yep.
know that a lot of people who are hard charging in the gym have gut dysbiosis, right?
Yep.
And so if you can take a moment to kind of take a step back, embrace this bit of hunger, because we are living in a comfort crisis. Embrace a little bit of the hunger, because I think when we take in food after that, it feels so much better, and it actually tastes better. We can actually taste the food, which is
Yep.
really good. And then what I also leverage in my DIY version of Prolon is I leverage ketone supplementation,
Hmm.
exogenous ketones,
Yep.
right? So some people might say, well, that's not a fast. Well, I'm not trying to go through semantics here, right? Like, I don't care what you call it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get you to reset. And
Yep.
if you're dealing with hunger and you're dealing with brain fog, then why not take something that is known as the fourth fuel that can help your brain, help you to stay motivated, help you to go out and have that walk, and so on and so forth. So this is what I'm doing, because I feel like this is the best opportunity to get people to go, oh, I do have an ability to have autonomy in my life. I can now feel and understand that I'm in control of what happens to me and how I feel.
Yep. 100%. So well said. Yes, I like that idea. I'm going to take your recommendation of adding ketone, like that, adding that fuel while doing the fast. That's a great point.
And can we talk about gut fuel before we wrap this up?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Gut fuel.
Gut
Yes. Okay.
fuel.
So as a dietitian, and since I've been here at Pendulum, like you'll see on our website, like we're constantly talking about like what is the food that supports these beneficial organisms so that they can survive in your gut, right? So like they need us, we need them. What do they need from us? They need fiber. So the butyrate producers need fiber because, like I mentioned earlier, that fermentation process of the fiber gives us back that butyrate. So that's how that relationship works. And then Akkermansia needs polyphenols. That's literally the energy source, and so if it doesn't get them, it dies. Like it just goes away. And so that's probably another reason why so many people are missing Akkermansia, because they're not feeding it properly. So Gut Fuel is first of its kind, a really unique product that is combining not just one type of fiber, but many types of diverse fibers. So that's feeding all of the different diets of the good organisms in your gut. And then it's also putting polyphenols in there as well. So you're supporting the butyrate producers that need those different diverse fibers, and you're supporting the Akkermansia as well. You're getting some of the fibers too that a lot of people miss. So there's one particular fiber, resistant starch, that you get from potatoes, white potatoes, that you have then cooled. So unless you're eating a
Yes.
ton of potato salad every day, like you're not necessarily getting this particular type of fiber. So this is a really easy way to get that fiber on a consistent basis. And like I mentioned, it's all about diversity in the gut as far as the organisms are concerned. But then they're all diverse and they're all different. They all need different types of fuel. Gut fuel is not just that psyllium husk, that you find in Metamucil, which is great. It's a bunch of different types of fibers to really help nourish those microbes. So, and you can mix it in. You see on our website, like you can mix it into smoothies. We've mixed it into, I think at the lunch that you attended, they mixed it into the different like tahini and sauces and green goddess dressings to add to your foods. Like it is so versatile. Like you can mix it into pretty much anything. Stay away from the hot foods, like hot beverages, hot foods. Mix it into your latte, not your hot coffee, your iced latte. Mix it into your overnight oats and your chia puddings. Don't mix it in your hot oatmeal because that will actually disrupt that potato starch that's supposed to be eaten cold. It disrupts that. So you want to put it into your like room temperature or your cold products, your cold foods.
I'm glad you talked about the resistant starch thing because, again, when I'm talking to clients, I like to give them very easy moments in which they can make these small incremental changes that have a big bang for the buck.
Mm-hmm.
And creating this resistant starch thing is super simple, like you mentioned. You can, cook some rice if you're going to have rice in your diet. Cook some rice and then cool it.
Mm-hmm.
And then prepare it for the next meal.
Yep.
And I actually tested that with my CGM. Now, keep in mind, I also use healthy fats like butter or olive oil to go with that to kind of help reduce that spike a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
But it's really cool when you can go, oh, I've heard this on this show. Let me try it. Let me test it. Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know your time is very, very important. I want to make sure that, was there anything else that we want to talk about before we hop off? And obviously I would love to have you back on, but I want to make sure that I give you the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me, and hopefully this wasn't too confusing for folks. Our website is great, so if you have questions or you need clarity, like go there, Pendulum Life. But also, I think that it's important for people to know that Pendulum is a company that is founded on science and innovation. For me as a dietitian, I was so excited to work here because I was like, oh my gosh, these people figured out how to bring Akkermansia to the marketplace. And that is just the first strain that we're bringing forward. Like we have goals and ambitions to bring other anaerobic keystone novel strains that are so good for our health, right? That like people are missing and they're really suffering. They're having symptoms and consequences of like not having these very important organisms. So I'm excited and I'm proud to be part of a company that is, really changing microbiome health, like where we're going in the probiotic industry and like doing something different that's meaningful.
That is very cool, and that's a very nice cliffhanger. I'm looking forward to what's on the horizon because so far everything you guys are doing at Pendulum is really, really awesome. And I say that because I am a consumer. I'm a loyal consumer, and I'm looking forward to what else is to come. And at some point, I'd love to have you back on so we can talk about some of these new things, and maybe we talk about some more experiences. If any of you are curious in trying this out, I do have an affiliate link that you can use. We'll include in the show notes here. And also feel free to reach out to the team at Pendulum.
Yes.
I know they're very, very helpful. And the more feedback they can get from people, the better they can do with the company and where it's headed. So, Christina, thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen. Better come give us a minute or two. Open the box up, we giving you tools. Giving your engine the fuel that it needs. Breathing into it, it's autoimmune. Make a connection, we're stronger in two. Making us one of a kind of a few. Work on the mind, but show me your moves. If you do what you say, you know what to do. Yeah.
Walk the talk.